and we're up and running. And it's a nice day after the big storms here in the Chicago region. All kinds of wonderful thunder bumpers went rolling through the area after 3 or 4 days of extreme heat and high humidity. Those thunder bump on the horizon for the last 48 hours, and then they released their bounty upon the land. How are you this morning, Barrett?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, I decided right before the storms came that I wanted to make a quick run to the store, and I just got inside the grocery store as the first few drops were falling. And as I'm checking out, I'm looking out at the parking lot. And it's just like sheets and sheets of rain. I'm like, I don't think I need to rush right back home. I'm gonna sit here in the cafe at the store for a while.
Yep, that's the way it works. Although there's a video floating around on YouTube, or on Facebook, and I imagine on other social media, of this guy. I think it was in Missouri, where he pulls out of his garage. He backs out of his garage and backs onto the little country road because they live in farm country, and there was a tornado that literally just his video cam was recording on his truck. And this tornado is like starting to come right across the road in front of him. So he backs up a little bit, and then he thinks, oh, I'll drive back into my garage. And he turns and he starts to go in that direction, and then slams on his brakes, because first the video cam captures his house, which disintegrates literally in front of him. And then it captures the garage, which does the same. Both buildings were just completely eradicated, and he's sitting there in the truck witnessing it. And thank God nobody was hurt. But boy, would that ever be an experience that you could tell to your grandchildren, huh?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to forget that one for a while. Wow.
I think he's probably going to be cleaning up the truck for a while, trying to get those stains and smell out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And, you know, I mean, the interesting thing about this is that, we call these, in their vernacular and even in like legal contracts, like insurance, we call that an act of God. And, one of the things we're really learning is that there's no way that that is of God. God has nothing to do with destruction. God has nothing to do with things falling apart, homes being destroyed, all the other things that can happen here in this physical world. So, wow, that's shocking to imagine. Just imagine that happening. That's intense.
It is intense, and it's the constant litany of the ego, that God's doing this in order to get you back on track, in order to fix you because you're broken. And this week has been kind of a horrific example of that in the news. We've got people shooting congressmen, and we've got people leaping from burning buildings and throwing babies out of third-floor windows to try and get them to safety. So we are surrounded right now by a little spike in the collective consciousness here. And we just have to learn how to not resist it, to look at it and let it just pass right through us.
Yeah, yeah. As long as we think that we are a resident of crazy town, we're going to feel like a victim in some way. And what we're learning is that no, this world is not our home. And that's really the good news, because it means that we do have a home that's worthy of us. And we do have a place that we can be where things are not, destructive, where pain and suffering is not real. And a lot of times as we start to get into this, we kind of think, well, I want that. I want an experience without any fear or suffering. But what we usually don't see is that some part of us unconsciously is holding on to this dynamic of the ego. And what we're learning is, like, how do we undo that part of us that's clinging to the fear? So as we've been talking about the last few weeks, there's a really beautiful pamphlet at the end of the course, or a supplement to the course called the Song of Prayer pamphlet. So we've been diving into what prayer is and what prayer isn't. And we just finished the section about praying for one's enemies, and realizing that as long as we believe we have an enemy, then we're definitely needing some prayer. And we're shifting into the next section, which is called praying with others. So yeah, I'll just share that here. Until the second level at least begins, one cannot share in prayer. So I think he's really talking about stepping out of that belief that enemies are real and that we have conflict like that in our life. For until that point, each one must ask for different things. But once the need to hold the other as an enemy has been questioned, and the reason for doing so has been recognized, if only for an instant, it becomes possible to join in prayer. Enemies do not share a goal. It is in this their enmity is kept. Their separate wishes are their arsenals, their fortresses in hate. The key to rising further still in prayer lies in this simple thought, this change of mind. We go together, you and I. So you could say that all of Jesus's message is in helping us to shift out of this idea that, we know what's in our best interest and we want to get what's ours, what's going to help us the most. And shifting out of that into this idea of commonality of purpose, that we are all one. And until we, at the very least, recognize that we have one goal, we can't really make any substantial progress. So this is a big shift for all of us, and this is, I think, what he's starting the section off with, is to say, hey, that old way of doing, that old way that we see on the news every day, that old way that we see even in perhaps the carnage of a thunderstorm, like rolled through here yesterday, that's not where our truth lies. Our truth lies in coming together. Our truth lies in knowing that we are all in this as one, and coming from that new perspective.
That is most assuredly true. And one of the things that, the ego is very alert to is any opportunity to point out differences and to create these seductive ideas. And one of the ones that's been around for millennium, it seems like, is the idea of we're going to fight for peace. And that is such an inane statement. It's such a stupid idea. And yet everybody buys into it over and over again. And it's like, just stop and look at the words and think about the words, and then ask yourself if this makes any sense at all. So we get invested in our little tirades and in our causes, and ultimately we end up creating an even larger gap between people because we believe we can pound them down and change their belief to accommodate our belief. And the truth is, both beliefs have to be surrendered at some point. So why wouldn't you start the process instead of being the one that holds out until the last man standing finally, picks up a white flag and starts to swing it around in the air?
Yeah, and I think it's true. It reminds me of a section earlier in the text where Jesus basically talks about these times of conflict and says that he who is more sane in the relationship, it's that person's responsibility to choose love. And I think it points to a really helpful idea, is that we don't need both sides of a conflict to be right-minded in order to help heal that conflict. It actually only takes one side. The analogy that comes to mind is if you were playing tug of war, you versus another person, and you stop pulling, well, the game is over. I mean
The best part of it is if you just let go, you also get comic relief watching your opponent land in the mud puddles. So there's multiple advantages to that mindset.
Yeah, yeah. When we unplug from this, sometimes something very unexpected happens, but it always helps us to find some new avenue, some new direction that we can take. I think that a lot of times people don't have a vision. Well, how could we resolve this conflict? This seems unwinnable, like we take something really tough, like peace in the Middle East. Like you just look at the factors happening on both sides, and it's easy to say there's no way. There's no way peace is ever going to happen here. These people have been fighting for hundreds and hundreds of years. But it only takes one inspired idea to really kind of shift. If you would have basically sketched out the map of how Gandhi helped liberate India from the British rule, people would have laughed at it. They would have said, "There's no way that's going to work," and they would have said, "It's pointless to even try." But with spirit leading, there's really nothing that can't be accomplished. But we just have to be willing to ask, and we have to be willing to put aside our ideas of how things should be in order to let ourselves be guided in how things can unfold.
That's very true. I have a good friend, Yuval Ron, whom you have met, who is very active in establishing a peaceful way of resolving differences with the Jews, the Arabs, and the Christians in the Middle East. And his primary theme is music as a common language. And of course, I come along and I've got this vision of getting people together to sit down and break bread and using food as a common language. So there are ways that instinctively, when we allow ourselves to respond to the instinct that spirit is planting in our little peanut brain here, that is the thing that is going to resolve the differences. We have to find the common ground. You can sit down and share a bowl of couscous or share a melody or something like that. You all of a sudden recognize, oh, this guy isn't nearly as much of a satanic cultist as I had imagined him to be. Mm-hmm. So it really is a situation where there are no problems. There are only solutions, and we have to have that mindset that we have a solution, and now we have to implement it, and we can get everybody to the table without being damaged in the journey there.
Yeah, I like that vision. But it sounds like what you're saying is I shouldn't reveal to people my secret Satanism.
Well, you should be somewhat discreet with that, because all those black cats at the midnight hour seems like it's going to add up.
I knew that seemed like a bad idea at the time.
Yeah, every time you do one of them, you take 9 lives in one swath. And karmically, that's kind of a rough ride for anybody, I would think.
Yeah. Well, who knew what direction this conversation was going to go today?
It's kind of like the weather. Stick around, it'll change. Anyway, as we're moving on here to section 2, paragraph 2, it goes on to say, now it is possible to help in prayer, and so reach up yourself. This step begins the quicker ascent, but there are still many lessons to learn. So we've got a quickening occurring here if you're receptive to it. The way is open and hope is justified. Yet it is likely at first that what is asked for, even by those who join in prayer, is not the goal the prayer should truly seek. Even together, you may ask for things and thus set up an illusion of a goal you share. You may ask together for specifics and not realize that you are asking for effects without the cause. That's an interesting concept there, is in order for us to resolve this process, in order in order for us to be able to implement this process, we have to have an awareness of the cause of the conflict and not simply trying to achieve a amenable outcome. It goes on to say, and this you cannot have, for no one can receive effects alone, asking a cause from which they do not come to offer them to him. So basically, again, we're going back to that central theme of A Course in Miracles, which is the idea of separation. And so if we're looking at this as the guy sitting across the table is the guy across the table, and failing to recognize that, oh, I'm sitting across the table for myself, then you're stuck in the same mud hole over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, he's talking about some really good points here, which is that generally when people start to hear about prayer, they start praying for what they think they want. Oh, if I get this car, if I get this house, if I get this job, if I get this relationship, then I'll be happy. Yay, But what is really not seen is that we're only asking for the effect, as he's saying here. And when Jesus uses the words cause and effect, we can substitute the true cause being mind and the effect being this world. So what is he saying? Well, this world is caused by the mind. There's nothing that's really caused by the world itself. Nothing is caused by the effect. Now, this is kind of like a tough one to swallow at first, because it sure looks like, oh yeah, well, that storm caused that tree branch to blow down. That's the way we usually think of cause and effect. But as we get this idea, we realize, no, nothing here is caused by anything physical. It's always just happening at the level of the mind. And as we start to awaken to that, all of a sudden we realize that what we really want is not the thing, not the car, not the girl. What we really want is we want the peace. We want the happiness that we think that thing is going to bring to us. So what Jesus is encouraging us to do is saying, well, rather than ask for the thing you think is going to make you happy, why don't you just ask for happiness? Then no matter what happens, you're going to have the happiness.
Exactly. And, part of that is discussed in other parts of the Course, where we're looking at the fact that we're always out of the present moment. In other words, everything that you're seeing is the past. So if you're looking around the room, you're experiencing what your beliefs were 20 seconds ago or 2 hours ago or whatever, however you want to imagine it. Nothing that you're seeing is seen in the here and now. And that's why we have to withdraw from the physical world. We have to close our eyes in order to be able to see. And even though that sounds like an idiotic statement, that is the first step in reclaiming vision and replacing sight with vision, is to see the truth in the moment. And when you can allow yourself to relax into the presence that you actually are, when you allow yourself to relax into the God presence that surrounds you, you will discover that you are surrounded, supported, and infused with not only love, but with life itself, the most dynamic experience you can have. So this is, that holy instant where we step out of time, we shut down the chatter in the brain and allow ourselves to experience the moment that surrounds us.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the state that all the mystics are talking about in the poetry and in their writings. They're talking about this sort of ineffable experience of love itself. And, words always seem to kind of not do it justice. The words can't capture these experiences because it's an experience beyond concepts. It's an experience beyond form, beyond time and space itself. And this is the answer to all of our issues, all of our wants, all of our questioning. That when we come to this place of being, really all questions end. There are no questions in heaven. There's just an experience of love. So when we keep our eye on the ball and realize that's really what we want, then all of a sudden the rest of these things start to get a little simpler.
Yep, it's falling into that idea of the peace that passeth understanding. You can't even comprehend the magnificence of that state of being.
Yeah. Well, I was driving down the road and I thought I saw something passeth me the other day. Maybe that was it.
No, that was actually a Volkswagen Jetta. It was driven by a kamikaze Nazi going from Chicago to Milwaukee to do a meetup. So
Gotta watch out for that guy.
I think so.
All right. Well, oh man. I don't even know what to say to that one.
And just battling. So I suppose we could go further here with
Sure.
section 3.
Okay, I'll read the next one. Even the joining, then, the joining in prayer, is not enough. If those who pray together do not ask, before all else, what is the will of God? From this cause only can the answer come in which are all specifics satisfied, all separate wishes unified in one. So he's really emphasizing here this idea that comes up in the workbook lesson: I do not perceive my own best interests. So rather than asking for something in the world, if we just ask for that experience of love, if we just ask to know God's will, whatever needs to happen on a level of form, it just starts to flow. It just starts to unfold in a way that feels right. So as I was just sharing with Chris before our call, yesterday I was just sort of in this state of being receptive and listening and seeing what wanted to come forward, because I had an idea in my mind of something to do, and it didn't feel like that was quite what wanted to unfold. And then what came through for me was this feeling of starting a school, starting a school around A Course in Miracles. So announcing it here publicly for the first time. I don't know exactly what this will evolve into, but there's something beginning here. And I even already got the name for it, Chris. It's Miracles You. So Miracles You.
Well, and I think we all deserve to get our doctorate from that school.
Yeah, and as we teach, we shall learn. So I know I'm going to be doing a lot of learning in this process, and have been throughout all of this experience of being in the role of a teacher around this message of A Course in Miracles. So before I wander too far into the woods, let me at least finish this paragraph here. Prayer for specifics always asks to have the past repeated in some way. What was enjoyed before or seemed to be, what was another's and he seemed to love, all these are but illusions from the past. The aim of prayer is to release the present from its chains of past illusions, to let it be a freely chosen remedy from every choice that stood for a mistake. What prayer can offer now so far exceeds all that you asked before, that it is pitiful to be content with less. So another way of saying this is when we are asking for a specific thing, when we are asking for a form within the world, we're really limiting what we can offer to Spirit and what Spirit can offer to us. There's a great example of this, in the book about Helen, her biography written by Ken Wapnick, where he shares a story about the fact that she was always shopping, and wanting to try to find the right this or that. And so she would ask Jesus for help. She would ask Jesus to help her find the right coat that she wanted to find. And one of these experiences, basically, Jesus was telling her this, like, if you ask more and more generally about what you want, I can still provide you with what you're looking for, but I can do so in a way that is of the highest good for everyone, rather than just helping you find this specific thing for the best price, in one of the stores nearby. I can let this whole shopping experience be actually an instrument to reveal the deeper experience of peace that's there for all of us. So that was kind of a cool teaching, a cool message that I think is applicable to all of us in our lives.
Yeah, it's interesting how even though her consciousness had been expanded dramatically by being the scribe for the course, she still was thinking in terms of limitations. Oh, I want to, implement my budget and keep my smallness here by shopping for the least expensive but best outcome situation. And, perhaps the answer to that is, just realize that God is infinite source, infinite supply, and stop looking for the bargains and start looking for the things that give you joy. And you'll discover that most of those things are not objectified. You'll be able to realize the entire journey by looking at the single item and realize, oh, if I buy this car, it has these attributes, but more importantly, it makes me look, prosperous and empowered or whatever. But then you take it 3 steps further and realize, oh, well, that was a vanity that I really didn't need. And, why don't I get the one that gives me the greatest sense of comfort, protection, and ease? So we're constantly engaged in prayer, as this section has pointed out in previous chapters here. The whole act of life is, to a certain degree, of prayer. And it is so vital that we are able to recognize what we are putting into the universe, putting into the mind of God. We're showing up on the doorstep saying, God, look at me. I'm this poor, hacked up, debilitated individual who desperately needs help out of my travail. And God is going, no, you're not. You're just being a doofus here. So get a little backbone.
Yeah, I know. Every now and then God calls us a doofus.
Well, that's where the word came from. So, and God sitteth upon his throne and looked down upon the travail of men and declared, thou art doofi. Individually, you are a doofus. So get a grip.
Yeah, I must have skipped over that passage in the Bible.
Yeah, that was somewhere between Deuteronomy and Revelations. I am not quite sure, but you can start digging around. Anyway, well, in order to finish up this particular section, I'll read number 4 here. It says, you have chosen a newborn chance each time you pray. Boy, is that ever an empowered statement. It's like every time you are in contemplation, you are projecting these thoughts out, you can change the entire universe that you are experiencing. My God, that is just astonishing. And would you stifle and imprison it in ancient prisons when the chance has come to free yourself from all of them at once? Do not restrict your asking. Prayer can bring the peace of God. What time-bound thing can give you more than this? In just the little space that lasts until it crumbles into dust. So, it's like he left the best part of this whole section for the last power punch. Gonna let you have it right in chalks here. That's a beautiful statement. What time-bound thing can give you more than this? So what you really want is the peace of God, that holy experience, that sense of union with that which is omnipotent, to claim your own omnipotence over all the illusions that surround you.
Yeah, I think we've got a new subtitle for the course. Jesus, he really packs a punch.
I like that. Yeah, we can probably even lift some really good fight music from some of those Rocky movies and put them into the background.
All right.
Good thing.
There we go. I think we've got a blockbuster here on our hands.
Yeah, it could be. Well, you've got a commitment coming up in 3 minutes, so we should finish this off. I would say bada bing, bada boom.
All right. Well, this has been a real joy with you as always, Chris. And yeah, there's amazing messages here in this section. So encourage anyone who's listening to dive in and dig through this even a little bit more on your own. There's always a deeper depth to go with this material. So yeah, a really beautiful day today.
It has been, and it will continue to be. So we will reconvene in 1 week, but in the interim, get out and share the love and pass the love around.
All right. Sounds good. You too, brother.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye, dude.
Bye.